we got rid of George, we got rid of Rod, now what? And I think we need to look at that system, at how the culture that allows people like George Ryan and Rod Blagojevich to become governor, we have to look at how that functions or doesn't function, and make the changes necessary so that good people can rise to the top, so that the cream can rise up and not just the rats. So a couple of things that I know are coming in Springfield and that all of you should know about. There will be another strong push for campaign contribution limits. Harry Osterman had a bill in the last session. He has a bill again in this session. It's House Bill 24. It's a fine idea, a good start. It essentially takes the federal system of campaign finance limitations and puts it in place here. The reason this is a good idea is that right now, an official can say to a contractor, to someone who wants to be appointed to a board, someone who wants a positive regulatory action, someone who has a building they want to lease, someone who wants something tangible from the state, I can get you what you want, but you have to give me a 6-figure campaign contribution, or you have to give me a 5-figure. We'll price it out somehow. But campaign finance has become the legalized way that bribes get passed around. If we put limits on that so that a candidate cannot ask for $25,000, cannot take $50,000, can't get that money through their campaign fund, that will just remove that possibility. So contribution limits are one important part of what we have to do. Another part that bears serious study is public financing. And my first job out of college was with a government relations firm in Connecticut. And Connecticut, 2 years ago, shocked the world by enacting public financing by statute. A handful of states before had adopted voter referendum to create public financing systems. But Connecticut actually, the members of the General Assembly voted for a public financing system for their office, for statewide office, essentially agreeing to give tax money or resources to their opponents. Now here, that's the hard part, is getting public officials to acknowledge that helping their opponent is a good idea. But that's what makes democracy more vibrant, when candidates have enough resources to run campaigns, to get their message out, and to do so without becoming beholden to those people who can write checks to help them. Right now, most candidates for statewide office get most of their money from fewer than 5% of their donors. Most of the money comes in chunks of 10 grand or more. That's a lot of money to be coming in from a small group of people. And while limits will help to lower that, limits will also make it harder, meaning you have to reach out to more donors to raise money. And so to soften that blow, public financing is a way of saying that candidates who have support, who have a base within the district or within the state, can get get clean resources to run their campaign. The bill will have a huge fiscal note. It's going to cost a lot of money. But it's also going to save a lot of money. Because when a campaign contributor says, sure, I'll give you 100 grand, and by the way, I have a friend over here who needs a job. And the state then says, well, I can hire that person. I'll create a job for 50 grand, and everybody's happy then. The cost of our current system has to be calculated in two. So while there may be a huge cost for public financing, there's also a huge opportunity for savings, where programs that exist primarily to keep a small group of campaign contributors happy can get wiped off the books. And as we study this more, I think we'll have examples to indicate what kind of savings we can see to taxpayers net of the cost of creating a public financing system. So that's something else and I think those two together will really go the furthest to address the kind of rat race that we have now, to change the way that campaigns are conducted, financed, and funded, so that candidates and voters can identify better, and voters will have a real choice. I mean, voters will then have the opportunity of saying, I can vote for the candidate who takes public financing, or I can vote for the one who's all funded by interests I'm concerned about. There are a number of other things that are going to come up in the next session too. Another list of what I would think of are good little bills. Bills that are absolutely worth doing, in and of themselves are not going to rock the system, to quote our ex-governor. But bills that will make a huge difference. There will be a big push to change statements of economic interest. I don't know if any of you have ever read a statement of economic interest filed by a state official. There are eight questions on the statement. They're really designed so that the official who fills them out can say none or NA or not applicable. In fact, most of the questions are answered none or not applicable. We've seen a handful of candidates who fill out both the state form and the federal form who are acknowledging far more financial interests on their federal form than on their state form. And it's not because they're lying on the state form. It's because the state form is written in a way that they don't have to acknowledge or own up to these interests. The federal form is far more thorough. And I think if we can get that enacted in state law, the public will have a far better sense of what financial interests, what conflicts of interest exist between constituents and public officials. So there will definitely be a push for that. There will definitely be a push for lobbyist registration and regulation. Our state does not tell the public what lobbyists are up to. I'm a lobbyist, and I'm happy to tell you what I'm up to, but there are many more who don't. Lobbyists have to say, right now, they have to own up to which officials they're meeting with, but not what they're saying with those officials, and not on whose behalf they're meeting with those officials, and not how much they're paid to meet with those officials or how often they meet. There's a lot that goes on that our current reports do not disclose. Much like the Statement of Economic Interest, the lobbyist disclosure reports seem to be worded in a way to obscure what's actually happening rather than to reveal what's actually happening. So there will definitely be another push there. The Freedom of Information Act is another area that I know the Attorney General is interested in, and many others who find that FOIA has become a blockage, a hindrance to getting information. That it lays out a clear process, and if you want information, you have to jump through these hoops. If they don't want to give you the information, they can just not give it to you. And your only recourse then is to go to court, who's all done that? Has anyone here actually gone to court under FOIA? See, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And if someone doesn't want to give you government records that after all your tax money is paid for, your only recourse is to hire a lawyer and go to court, and if you win, you might get reimbursed for your legal fees. But even there, it's very difficult. So there will definitely be a push. Sorry, I need to learn how to hold the mic for FOIA. Some other ideas that are coming up. Procurement reform is going to be an issue. Revolving door issues of state employees leaving to work for contractors and lobbyists. You may recall the head of the tollway tried to leave this last fall to go work for a contractor, and that was all legal. It didn't actually go through. He was sort of shamed into not doing it, but if an agency head wants to go lobby for a company he used to regulate, or those kinds of doors have to be closed so that the public can know that public officials are working for the public as opposed to the people they're supposed to be overseeing. And as you heard earlier, there will definitely be a push for redistricting reform. How the districts are drawn, how that process works, or more in practice does not work. So there's going to be a lot of these kinds of issues. And I think Springfield is far more receptive now than it has been.